How's it going, Patreon folks? Today we're going to learn how to create this looping animation. It's all done in Geometry Nodes. It's really cool. This is the project file we are going to be done with, and you can grab that on Patreon now if you'd like to check out the original file. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and open a new file, and we're going to start up. I'm currently using Blender 3.2.1, and let's go ahead and just get in a plane right here and hop on over to Geometry Nodes, and I'm going to go and just kill that window there. So delete that input, we don't need it, and get a grid. So we're going to plug that grid into the Geometry Nodes, the Geometry output, and then I'm going to click and drag and type in 10. Let's honestly do 15. So that's going to be pretty good. Now right up here, I'm going to go to the wireframe view, and we're going to go ahead and click and drag and give myself a comfortable amount of geometry here. So just like that. And then Shift A, search, triangulate. And the reason why we're triangulating is because we're going to dual mesh. So if you Shift A and search DUAL, it's not going to do anything. But what happens is if you triangulate it, then you dual mesh it, then it gives you this nice little setup. So with that being said, now we're going to go ahead and split edges, and that's going to allow us right up here in the modifiers to add a smooth, where are we at here? A smooth modifier, and actually get these guys to separate from each other, which is really, really nice. All right, so we'll go back up here to the flat view, and we're going to go and add a solidify. And then we need the solidify to go in a negative value so that whenever we displace it, they behave the way we want it to behave, which is very important. Now in the geometry, in the modifier section, let's click on Geometry Nodes, and let's type in separate geometry, SEP, separate geometry. And then we're going to use faces right here and search up random value. So if you type in RAN, random value, and from float to Boolean, so we just get one slider and a seed, plug that into the selection, and that's going to give you some broken up geometry. So if you bring it down, that's nothing, or you can bring it up and do more. Now you can also use a texture for this. So say we get a color ramp, just say you want to have a little bit more control rather than it being totally random. You can get a noise texture and do the same thing with the separate geometry, and then you just bring this black portion of the color ramp in, detail to 0, bring your scale, bring my scale to like 1, maybe smaller than that, and now you kind of have a more controlled look. And then if you want to make it more random, do something like that. So you certainly do have some different ways to break up your geometry rather than just random selection. Those are the two ways, but you essentially just want to plug a texture in here to tell it how to delete and where to delete, which is really cool. And then of course this color ramp depicts how much. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to stick with the noise texture for now. There we go. And if you want a seed value, you can just go to 4D. But I think we'll probably be happy with this. We can go and start rendering and modeling and such. What we can do here is get a bevel modifier. So we'll get a bevel and then bring that amount to right about here. And then you can also bring up those segments. And now you have this. Now what I want to do now is notice how these are all the same plane, right? So that's cool, and we can change that. In fact, let's go ahead and displace first, and I'll go back to the point I was about to get to. So what we want to do is get a displacement node. But see how it goes bonkers like this? We need to actually bring it right underneath the geometry nodes, and so that it's only going to actually displace basically the unextruded version. So it's almost as if there's no solidify. It's only going to displace this. That's the way it reads it. And that's going to be nice to make it more controlled. So we're going to click New, click here. I'm going to go here to a cloud texture, bring that depth to 0, and bring that size to 5. So that's going to give you a much bigger range to actually displace. And then notice how these guys over here are intersecting, right here, intersecting. So bring that strength down until they are not intersecting. And that'll be kind of some plug and play as we design. And so we have this. If you're happy with this, you can do that. Now I'm going to show you an alternate thing you can do. If you hover over this section here and hit Control A, that applies now the geometry nodes, and you have physical faces to play with. And what you can do is I'm going to go to the face select, click here, then go to select random, and it's going to select some random ones. You can actually gauge how random you want it to be. And then you can just take this guy and bring them up to edit kind of the randomness that you're working with. So if you want to do that, you can, and that'll give you some more scale randomness, some height randomness within your animation. And hopefully they don't intersect anymore. But you can do that if you want. The downside is no more geometry nodes editability. So you better be happy with what you have when you do this. With that being said, we can just go ahead and move on, and we can start animating. So the way we're going to animate is we're going to go ahead and get a empty plane axis right there, and we're going to go get a curve circle. So click on your plane axis, your empty, and go to your constraints, add constraint, follow path, and select that Bezier circle. And then I'm going to stick with 250 frames, which is the default. And I'm going to go back to frame 0 and just go ahead and animate the offset. Notice that goes in a circle. That's going to help us displace. So we're going to use this empty as the displacement object so we can animate. If you follow the channel for a while, you've probably done this several times with my tutorials. So I'm going to click on offset, go to the end and type in 100, which is going to give you a 360-degree loop. If I press play, you can see it's going around. Now let's do one more animation. But first, let's go ahead and just attach this empty as the displacement object. So in the displacement, go from local to object, and then object to the empty. And we can go ahead and test if that works by up here in the outliner, clicking empty, and then just kind of moving it, and that's going to move it around. Now, it's going to lag around because the bevel made it pretty hefty. So you can go ahead right over here and click that little computer icon. And then if we go back to the displacement, if we go back to the empty here, it's going to not lag. So you can see how it's working, which is great. So now let's go ahead, just click on this one, go to the very end, type in 360. And if you press play, you can see it is working just the way we want it to work. You can see some intersection right here. But, as long as it's not, painfully noticeable, we'll just leave it. All right. All right, now let's go ahead and start lighting and shading this. So we're going to be using Eevee for this, so make sure your ambient occlusion, bloom, screen special reflections is on, and turn off half-res trace in your screen space. So we're going to go to the render button here. And so what I'm going to do now is we're going to go to the material preview and get a material for this. So click on the material icon, click new, type in, or just make it metallic. There's nothing to type in here. Then we can turn on that bevel just to see how that's looking. So that's looking really nice. We'll shade smooth here. All right. So that's looking really, really good. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go here and let's enter in a point light here. I'm gonna hit G, and I'm just gonna kind of hit G and move him up a little bit. So he's right here in the middle, and then give him a strength of like 800. And then go ahead and pick whatever color you like. So what I want to do is I'm hit the tilde key and go to the top. Every time there's a big gap, put an area light in there. And what you can do is if you hit Alt D instead of Shift D, when you hit Alt D, you can change the color of both of them at the same time, which is very, very good. And so now you can have control over every light. Hit Shift D, Alt D, Alt D, Alt D, and spread these area lights all around the scene in the large open spaces of your animation. There we go. Now we have this happening here. So we can go here to the world settings, bring that down to black. And then now that we have this, we can go ahead and set up our camera view. So I'm going to Shift A. I want the camera to be maybe right here to give enough negative dark space here, but really bright here. So we'll get our camera, Control-Alt-0, snap it to view. In the camera settings, we're going to go to orthographic, and then you can play with your orthographic scale and then hit G to kind of move it around if you'd like. And then one other thing I want to do is get some lighting to be hitting the tops of these metallic objects. So we're going to get a area light, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit G and move it up. And just kind of move it around by hitting G. And then we can bring that power to, say, 500. Give it a nice blue. And then maybe move him back. Cool. All right. Now we're working with something pretty cool. What I want to do now to really spice this up and make it look good is, of course, adding some volume. So click on your world icon, then go down here to volume, and we're going to go to principled volume, and then bring that density down till you like the amount of volume in this scene. I'm going to bring my, say, my roughness down on my objects here. I'm going to hit this guy, and we're going to go from square to disk. Scale them down, and I'm going to hit Alt-D and get one more so that we have some good light coverage. And we're pretty much done. This is pretty good. I want to preview how it looks in Eevee, so I'm going to click on this object, go to the modifiers, and turn off the bevel, and then shade flat. And we can see it looks like it's alive. It looks like it's breathing. It's really cool. It's looking really nice. And the most important is this loop works. It's a looping animation, and then we can bring that bevel back and then shade smooth. And we're pretty much done with this scene. It's done. It's good. It's all nice and clean. Very cool. And we can just go ahead and render one of the images to see, make sure everything looks good in the final result, which is what we're getting. So you can go ahead now, and I'm gonna leave this open for your creativity. You can add whatever colors, whatever other objects, depth of field, anything you want to this and make it a lot better. For your export settings, we're gonna click on this little printer icon, pick your resolution, go here, pick wherever you want to, click this button here and save it to your desktop or whatever file you want. We're gonna go from PNG to FFmpeg video, go from encoding to MP4, medium quality, perceptually lossless, render animation, and you'll have something really nice by the end of it. So thank you guys for watching. Love this animation. Really love making stuff like this. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.